Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 is a few days old at this point, and it ended on a huge cliffhanger with Huggy Wuggy from Chapter 1 turning out to be alive, so fans are obviously wondering about the next game, Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. And we've already gotten tons of info regarding the game, things like the release date, new characters, the ending, the plot. But the first thing I'm going to be going over is the characters for Chapter 5. So throughout Chapter 4, we got tons of new lore and build up for the character, the prototype. So a lot of people think that he is going to be the main villain for Chapter 5. And this does make sense, but if the prototype was the main villain for the game, that would confirm that Chapter 5 is the final game in the series. And I actually need to answer that question before I talk about anything else. Is Chapter 5 the last Poppy Playtime game? I did a poll on my YouTube channel, and it looks like most of you think that Chapter 5 should be the last game. But the thing is, about a year ago, Zach Bellinger, the CEO of Mob Entertainment, confirmed that there will be at least 6 chapters. But if there's one thing that we know about Mob Entertainment, it's that they're super planned out, because some rumors say that they've had the entire Poppy Playtime story planned out ever since Chapter 1. So for this message confirming Chapter 6, there could be the argument that plans changed. Maybe after Chapter 3 came out, Mob Entertainment said, let's have 6 chapters in the game, but then later they went back on that and said, you know what, let's just have 5. But here's why I think this is wrong. Because if Mob Entertainment is super good at planning things out in advance, then I don't think the numbers of chapters would just randomly change. So based off this message, I don't think that Chapter 5 will be the final game. And if this Discord message about Chapter 6 was outdated, Zach Bellinger could have easily just deleted it, but he still has it up, confirming at least 6 chapters. But now let's talk about the Chapter 5 characters. Obviously, the prototype will get a lot more build-up in the game, but I don't think we're actually going to kill him. He seems to be the main villain of the entire series, so when we do have the final game, he'll definitely be the main villain. But like I said, I don't think Chapter 5 will be the last game. But in the Chapter 4 ARG, we got the reveal of this brand new clown character, and everyone thought that he was going to be a major villain for Chapter 4, but once the game actually came out, we never saw him and he didn't even get mentioned. So they still have that character to bring out before the game series ends. And now this next part is going really far back, but on Mob Entertainment's Twitter for Easter of 2023, they made this entire comic with Bunzo the Bunny trying to find an egg in the factory, and he took the egg, accidentally breaking it, revealing a bird character. And then after he breaks the egg, he gets killed by some unknown monster, probably the mother of the bird that he killed. And we still don't know who this bird character was. It could have possibly been Poe being one of the nightmare critters from Chapter 4. But I feel like if it actually was that character, they would have told us. So we still don't have an answer for whose egg this was. And like I said earlier, Mob Entertainment is really good at planning things out years in advance. Like in the countdown for Project Playtime, one of the photos we got was a Huggy Wuggy cardboard cutout burning in the theater, hinting at the theater incident years before we would even hear about it. So there could also be a bird character in Chapter 5 along with the clown. And something I actually want to bring up from Chapter 3 is this poster we saw on the wall talking about a Playtime Co. theme park, and everybody thought that this was going to be the main area for Chapter 4, but obviously it wasn't. And we still have yet to see anything from this, and it never even got a mention in Chapter 4. And clowns do really fit with theme parks, so that could be something in Chapter 5. I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but I guess we'll see. And then obviously another villain in Chapter 5 is going to be Huggy. He was the entire cliffhanger for Chapter 4, so Chapter 5 will most likely start with a chase scene between us and Huggy. But if you watched my Huggy Wuggy video, I had a theory that Kissy Missy is actually going to calm him down, so he won't kill us and he'll be on our side in Chapter 5. And now the final character that I'm going to be talking about that could be in Chapter 5 is, believe it or not, Pianosaurus. One of the most controversial things about Chapter 4 is that the character Pianosaurus was wasted, him being built up with his own trailer and appearing in the Chapter 4 ARG, only for him to have less than 15 seconds of screen time where Doey kills him. But then Zach Bellinger came into the Discord server one day and said, y'all really like Pianosaurus, huh? Now this was very random, and again it was after Chapter 4, so this was him responding to all the backlash and hate for wasting the character. And then he said, lol, how is it a waste? So he's saying that Pianosaurus was not wasted as a character, but I feel like anyone just looking at what happened to him in Chapter 4 sees that his character was kind of wasted. But this is also hinting that he could do more in the future, like maybe Chapter 5. Maybe Playtime Co. built multiple of him, and I actually want to talk about a Pianosaurus note we saw in Chapter 4 real quick, because it hints at other characters like Pianosaurus, potentially for Chapter 5. The note says, Pianosaurus' temperament is like that of a rabid animal. It snaps at perceived motion, eats whatever fits in its mouth, regardless of appetite, combats the conditioning staff, and it cannot even play its insipid piano rhythms in tune. Perhaps one of the others from its line would have presented better music. So if you don't know about the Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 story, Pianosaurus was pretty much a failure all around, as an experiment in the factory and a toy. But what I want to focus on here is this note is where it says, perhaps one of the others from its line would have presented better music. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure Pianosaurus was a part of a band at some point. I heard it somewhere in Chapter 4, I'm not really sure where. If you guys can let me know in the comments, that would be nice. So either we see a different version of Pianosaurus that was a success in Chapter 5, or we see another one of the toys from his line, maybe one of his band members. So there could be another dinosaur-like character, maybe even Brawn, because maybe Brawn was a part of Pianosaurus' band at some point. So I'm pretty sure in response to all the hate and backlash, Mob Entertainment will give Pianosaurus a second chance in Chapter 5. Maybe not Pianosaurus himself, but a different version. So I'm pretty sure fans will be happy with that. But speaking of Brawn for a second, I just want to talk about something. And on Twitter, an ex-employee of Mob Entertainment, who's responsible for making the entire Poppy Playtime story, did a Q&A answering some questions about Poppy Playtime, and I just want to talk about one for a second, and he actually brings up Brawn the Dinosaur in it. We've known about the character Brawn the Dinosaur ever since the first Poppy Playtime Chapter 1 trailer, and we've never seen him in the games except for a little part in Chapter 2. But in the Q&A, someone asked about Brawn the Dinosaur, and he said, "We've literally tried to give Brawn a scene in every chapter, but it never works out. It's part of the reason we decided to give Brawn a restricted VHS tape on YouTube. Game dev is a lot of give and take, and sometimes you have to sacrifice some ideas for others." So if you guys can remember back to a couple years ago, on YouTube, Mob Entertainment uploaded this video about Brawn the Dinosaur, just showing off one of the experiments for him turning one of the people into toys. It didn't really include a lot of lore, just showed off what the experiment process was like. But apparently, Mob Entertainment has tried to give Brawn a scene in every single chapter, but it just has never worked out. But hopefully someday we will actually see him in the game, but I doubt we'll ever see him as a main villain. It's kind of the same reason I think that the prototype won't be the main villain in Chapter 5, and it's because we already know about them. We already know what Brawn looks like, what his personality is, so if we had him as the main villain, it would be kind of boring. Because one of the main things about building up a brand new Poppy Playtime game is trying to figure out who the monster will be. And if it's just Brawn the Dinosaur, someone we've already seen and know about, that would be kind of boring. But the prototype is kind of an exception because we don't know what he looks like. In the final game, we'll probably get him as the main villain. And now this next part won't take long, but I want to talk about the location of Chapter 5. This was already revealed to us in Chapter 4, where at the very end of the game, we were right in front of the door to go into the labs. The labs was where all the experiments happened in the Playtime Co. factory, and it is where the prototype hides, and this actually was one of the main reasons people think Chapter 5 will be the last game, because if we're going to the labs, there's nowhere else we can really go in the factory, so they would have to end it there. But I think the reason that they threw Huggy Wuggy in at the end of Chapter 4 is so that he'll actually stop us from going to the labs in Chapter 5. So I think Mob Entertainment is tricking everyone, making us think that we're going to the labs, but maybe Chapter 6 or 7 is when we'll actually go there, after we defeat Huggy for a second time. And now, for the end of this video, I just have some pretty generic Chapter 5 updates, but those other Zach Bellinger Discord messages I talked about earlier, those weren't the only ones he said that day. He put a few more, and here's the first one, and it says, "We have been reading so much feedback, it has been interesting to hear." So I think Mob Entertainment is going to take all the hate and criticism from Chapter 4 and use it to make a really good Chapter 5, because then, Zach Bellinger said, every game gets better, Chapter 5 will be even better. Now, I said this is generic because we weren't really expecting him to say Chapter 5 is going to be bad. They said the exact same thing about Chapter 4 when Chapter 3 ended, and I'm not saying Chapter 4 was a bad game. I thought it was pretty good, but I do expect a lot more from Chapter 5. Hopefully some good characters, a really good story, a good ending. But let me know in the comments, are you guys excited for Poppy Playtime Chapter 5? If you are, make sure to subscribe. Goodbye.